Hey friends, I hope the morning's treating you well. Hope you got your coffee. I just finished my coffee and left it back at the car. I got back home from the tour in Europe, and I wanted to talk a little bit about some problems I had with airports and lost guitars and such. Maybe you've seen the video about them losing my Martin D28 guitar. A very quick recap. As I flew from Bilbao, Spain to Amsterdam, and they made me check my guitar, and I had flown just 2 days earlier the opposite direction in the same size plane, and they let me take it in and it fit and it was fine. And I tried to tell them that and they would not listen, and got a completely different story than I got just 2 days earlier. And they made me check my guitar. When I landed, I waited outside the plane for them to set my guitar right there. It never came. Went and checked the oversized luggage bin, all of that stuff. It never came. And when I finally asked about it, they told me that they had no record of it ever being in their system, which was when I started really getting worried, because they put the little peels, the sticker tape thing that they put through the handle has a barcode you can scan and all that. I had my part of it. But the next day, right before I played a gig, it showed up. So we drove back to Schiphol Airport and got it just in time to play a gig. I had to drive all the way out to by the German border and had a good time with that gig. And I made a video about that. Some of you guys have seen it. It was very stressful. One of the most stressful parts that I didn't mention in that video was when I was looking for the guitar in the airport, they had these sections with these really big black blinds set up like barricades to where you're not supposed to see on the other side. And if you peek through the little corners in between, you could see hundreds of pieces of luggage in there that were lost and they didn't know where to go. And man, there were so many. I saw 5 or 7 of these different sections of lost luggage there. And I mean, if anybody's ever flown through that airport knows it's one of the busiest airports in the world. It's huge. It's amazing anything makes it where it's supposed to go. So the idea of checking something important is a little bit frightening to me when you fly through there. And when you start seeing just all the lost stuff that's just never going to make it anywhere, it's a little bit much. And I've said before, I am sympathetic with the people working there, because I think that everybody's having a hard time hiring people right now. So the people that work in places like that are overworked. They were probably overworked anyway. And it's so easy for something to get lost, and it's a needle in a haystack. But so when I saw all of that stuff around, I started really getting worried. But I got it back, and I felt good about that. But I had to fly again from Amsterdam to Copenhagen a few days later, and when I showed up to the airport, everybody was really nice to me, like really nice. I think that the airport employees seem to be a lot friendlier, and they seem to care genuinely more than the ones I encounter in the US. But I'm always overly nice also. But the lady, when I checked in at KLM, she said, "Sir, you have to check that guitar." I told her the story. I said, "I can't do this because I just had it lost, blah, blah, blah." I told her that whole story. Told her how it was fine for me to fly just 2 days before. I said, "I don't know the polite way to say this, but you guys aren't always on the same page. And it seems to be the only real rules are just whatever somebody thinks they are that day." And she was being nice, and she said, "Well, what we'll do is, you walk over here and you can check this at the oversized luggage bin, and someone will hand walk your guitar to the plane and then check it there." And I said, "Why can't that someone be me? Would that be so bad?" And she said, "I'll tell you what, I'm going to make some phone calls." And I stood there for 15 minutes while she called a lot of different people, and she wasn't able to get through to anybody who could tell her one way or the other. And like I said, I don't fault her. She was trying really hard. And she says, I'll tell you what, I'm not able to get a hold of anybody that can make a call on this. So why don't you just go ahead and carry your guitar through, and then when you get to the gate, they'll ask you to gate check it. And I said, that's fine. That's no problem at all. So I made it through that, went through security, got down to where the gate was, and I walked up to the desk, and I said, and she said that she would put a note on my, like when they scan my ticket, there'll be a note there. I don't know what that means, but I've had them put little notes on there that you need to pull this guy aside and search him. So I believe her when she says that. And anyway, I walked up to the desk and I said, hey, I was told that I would probably have to gate check this guitar because the guitar, won't fit in the closet inside. And the person, this is the second person I've dealt with, the person right there at the gate said, oh, it's no problem at all. You can carry that on and just put it in the closet. It's no problem. So it was a huge deal to the first person. The second person, it was no big deal at all. Now, I didn't realize there would be a third person, because usually the person at the gate is actually working on the plane. When you fly through the air, they're on the plane, and that person can walk you through. So when it's time to board the plane, we go through there, go down the tunnel, and when we get to the end of the tunnel, we walk into a bus. Like I said, it's a huge, busy airport. You get on a bus, and then they drive you a half a mile out somewhere to where the plane is. So there is a third set of people there who are actually on the flight. And when I walked up, I just said nicely, hey, I was told there'd be a closet here I could stick this in. That'd be all right. And the lady laughed and she said, well, that's interesting because we don't have a closet on this plane. And she said, you're going to have to gate check that. And I'm just kind of like, oh my gosh, this is the third person I've dealt with. I'm thinking, oh my God. And I'm being nice. And I look over, I'm kind of looking down the aisle, and I notice the overhead luggage bins are pretty big. And as she's saying whatever and trying to get me to go check it, I said, those bins look pretty big. I think this guitar will fit in it. And she looked up, she says, you think so? And I said, you mind if I try? And she says, if it'll fit, you can put it in there. And I walked back, put it in, fit perfect. Closed the bin, no problem at all. So I got pretty much 3 different stories on one flight. And just being nice and persistent kind of got me through all of that, and everything was fine. It's just really, really frustrating. It's probably frustrating for the employees, but it's obvious the companies are not telling people what their actual policies are, because everybody thinks something different. Now, some comments that I had on that video that I thought were interesting and I'll talk about. A lot of people said, why don't you just buy a seat and put your guitar in the seat? One problem with that is it's really expensive. I do this for a living, and every bit of money counts. And if I would do that on the way over, I'd be spending another $1,500 for a flight, and that's pretty hard. Now, I've bought seats twice on flights before. One was Aer Lingus, I believe it was the Irish airline. It was the Irish airline. I believe it's Aer Lingus. I was on their website when I was buying the ticket, and it was obvious. A lot of the European budget sites, you can get the actual ticket and fly somewhere for $35, $50, $60, but the luggage cost a lot. And I quickly realized it would be cheaper for me to just buy another seat than to pay for this as luggage, the guitar as luggage. So, and it said on the website that that's what I should do. Let me move this camera a little bit out of the light. So it said that's what I should do. And so I took a screenshot on my phone of that part on their website and all of that, and I bought the ticket. Now, when you buy the ticket for a guitar, you still have to fill out all the passport stuff and all of that. So you ask for a name, and I put first name guitar, second name guitar, last name guitar. And I put my address, I put my passport number on it and all that. And you know, I get on the plane, I have the guitar sitting in the seat, kind of strapped in with the seat belt, and one at a time, every person who works on that plane keeps walking past me saying, "Sir, you got to put the guitar somewhere." And I said, "I bought the seat." "Yep, sir, you got to put this guitar up. You can't leave it out there." And I said, "I bought a seat for the guitar." And, there's probably 5 people working on this flight, the flight attendants, and each one coming up and arguing with me about it, an argument that I just had with the next person. And I would get out my phone and show them, "This is what it said to do on your website right here. I'm just doing what it said to do." And it was a complete freaking hassle. And they all finally just kind of backed down. And it's not as easy as that. And that was me only paying like $50 or $60 for another seat. Imagine if you're paying $700 to fly somewhere. I also had the same thing happen. I can't remember if it was Ryanair or EasyJet, but I did the same thing, and it was a bit of a pain and did not go easy. It was the same sort of problems that I had before, but at least the guitar was on the flight. Another comment that I was getting, I'm trying to remember all the comments, a lot of people were just saying it was stolen, somebody stole it. And there were so many people saying that it made me think, sometimes in the comments, a lot of people will say something, like maybe a third of the people said it was stolen. It makes me quickly think there's some reference, some cultural reference or something that I don't get, or like somebody on some talk show is talking about something and I don't watch it or listen to it, so I don't know. It felt like that. It was like a severe cynicism. I really don't believe, like when it was missing, I didn't think it was stolen. If it would be stolen, it was always accusing the people that work at the airline of stealing it. I think if somebody who flew that day and saw a guitar case, they could pick it up and walk out. If they saw it on the luggage belt, they could pick it up and walk out and maybe get away with it, especially in the day and age of us wearing masks and stuff like that, maybe. But there's cameras everywhere. That would be hard. It would be even harder for an employee to steal a guitar, like an airline employee. Every single day they're going through different security checks and things like that. It just seems like it'd be so hard when they leave. There are people who see them leaving. There's their coworkers, there's like supervisors, there's all the cameras, and somebody would be like, "Why are you taking a guitar home with you?" That part seemed a little bit weird to me. But maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there's an easy explanation and I'm missing it. But also, what was the other one? People were saying you should never fly. I'm sympathetic to this one. You shouldn't fly with a Martin D28. Now, when I bought that guitar, this is not some pre-war, ultra collectible piece of history. When I bought it because it's a Martin. It's a nice guitar, but it's not like some old thing. It's like late 70s. It's not so old that it's irreplaceable or anything like that. So if anything ever happened to it, I wouldn't feel that bad. That's kind of how I thought about it. And then 20 years go by, and you're kind of like, man, I'm a lot more attached to that guitar than I realized I was. And I didn't really think about it until it went missing that day there in Amsterdam, and started thinking maybe I shouldn't travel with this guitar. Now, problem is, this is what I do. This is who I am. I'm a professional musician, songwriter, storyteller, stand in front of people and play songs. If I was like some really great craftsman woodworker, my tools would be really high grade. I wouldn't be, using cheap junk tools. And, if I was, I'm trying to think of all the different trades that people can learn, and they have a certain quality to their tools. Now, they'd still be good at what they're doing if they were using junky tools. But man, that's a hard one, you know? So I started thinking, man, maybe I should just buy another guitar. Maybe I should just, you know, buy something that I can travel with. I don't like new guitars. I don't, just look at me. I don't like things that are shiny and new and blinging, you know. I like things that are messed up and, I don't know, just scratched, dented, like myself, that have miles and age and wear on it. And so that's a hard one. But I started thinking, okay, man, maybe there's a new guitar out there. I don't know what new guitars are on the market. So one night I'm sitting in the hotel room and I just start looking on my phone. What's out there? And I'm just kind of Googling and looking through. And I thought maybe a parlor guitar, something smaller that would be easier to deal with maybe than a D28, you know, maybe they wouldn't ask me to check it as much. So I'm looking at like a parlor. Like, yeah, okay, I've always wanted a parlor anyway. I'm looking at newer ones. And then it's like, I don't know. I'm looking at things online. Is this any good? You know, a lot of them use good quality stuff or whatever. And I'm just looking, Google image searching, just kind of looking. And I see one. I'm like, well, that's kind of a neat looking guitar. What's that? And I click on it. And is it Recording King? They have a guitar that's the Justin Townes Earl model, and I'm like, man, old buddy Justin. It was kind of a weird being visited by a ghost in a hotel room in Europe, just blindly. And I guess I know Joshua Black Wilkins, my buddy Joshua. Let me move this over a little bit again. I'm trying to stay in the shade here. Joshua Black Wilkins is buddies with, he's a great photographer and musician. I knew from East Nashville, and he was buddies with Justin. And Joshua was playing Recording King guitar, so I'm guessing he got him involved. But they made the Justin model, and I think that it came out after he'd passed away, which was, and it looked pretty neat. It wasn't for me. But I thought that was pretty cool. I felt really good about him, but I got off track there. So I'm looking at these different things, and I thought, well, there's probably something on Reverb, and I thank you guys for staying with me here. I promise this is going somewhere good, hopefully. And I'm looking on Reverb, and thinking I'll find something used. I'm looking at parlor guitars, and I look, and I see one, and I'm like, ooh, that looks good. What's that? I get to clicking on it, and it's a 100-year-old parlor guitar, German-made, some German luthier who we don't know who it was. Looks like some pretty high-quality stuff. Beat up big time, and which I like. And it's at The Hague. And I was playing the next day in Rotterdam, which is very close to The Hague. So I send the guy a message. Hey, man, I'm playing in Rotterdam. Maybe you could tell me a little more about this guitar. Blah, blah, blah. And he got back to me and said he was out of the country or whatever. But I just kind of realized after I sent the message, okay, so the problem is I'm flying with a vintage guitar that's old and becoming irreplaceable to me. So I'm supposed to look for something new that I won't mind losing. And the thing I like is a 100-year-old parlor guitar. I'm like, what am I doing? I've gone so far off track down the rabbit hole towards what I like that I'm gonna buy this damn guitar that's 100 years old and then tour with it. And I just kind of shook my head and was like, man, I'm broken. And I was like, all right, just don't think about it until you get home. Just don't think about it. And so just a little bit more travel ideas, and then I'll get out of here. I'll leave you with this. I had the last gig of the tour was in Frederikshavn, Denmark. I'll say all of the gigs were really fun. All the gigs on the tour were really fun. It was easy. Outside of like the guitar stuff in the airports, it was easy. It was easy to get where I was supposed to be once I got there. I was in a good mood. Everybody was in a good mood. It was fun. The crowds were, you know, happy to see me. I was happy to play for them. And I just didn't pay attention to this last gig in Frederikshavn. I thought it was like an hour outside of Copenhagen or something. So it's no big deal. I just didn't, I usually pay a lot more attention. the promoter, who was very cool, arranged for someone to drive me to Frederickshaw. Well, it turns out it's like 5.5 hours, and by European standards, that is a long drive. You tell a European that you have to drive 3 hours, and they will, like, oh my God, are you serious? That's a bastard of a drive. And anyway, so it was a nice guy. He drives me out there, and we played a gig. Gig is great. Had a great time, wonderful time. And the next morning, supposed to drive back to Copenhagen, and then I'm gonna fly home. And the next morning, somewhere a few hours into the day, I find out that the guy's car won't start, and we're pretty far away. And I'm just like, oh God. And I was like, so what are we gonna do? And he's like, I'll get somebody to fix it. I'll get a mechanic. And I just start thinking, man, there's got to be another way to get back to Copenhagen. So I start looking around, and I find out there's a train. And I just tell the guy, man, I'm sorry you're having to deal with your car. You know, I'm sorry this is happening, but I got to get back, and I'm getting on this train. And I got on the train. It turned out I missed a connector. It took about 8 hours to get back to Copenhagen, but I got there. And long day. That day was like the first really rough day of the tour. The next day, I'm supposed to fly out. I wake up at 6 a.m. I'm supposed to fly out around 1 to JFK in New York, and then to Indianapolis. They delay. I get to the airport. They delay the flight till 3. We get on. We fly to JFK. What I do when I'm flying to Europe, I do everything I can to sleep, because if I can sleep, it's easier. That's the hardest thing, is going to Europe. Coming back, it's a lot easier, and I just watch bad movies. I'll watch anything with an alien invasion or a giant dinosaur or something like that. You know, if they had Godzilla flicks on, I'd be watching that, just because, you know, it keeps you awake. So I'm staying up the entire time, and then when I get home, it's usually around 10 o'clock at night, and I go to sleep, and then I start getting on a regular schedule easier. So I stay up the entire flight. When I land at JFK in New York, I find out my flight from JFK to Indianapolis is canceled. And I'm just, oh God, what the hell? So I get all my luggage, and I go out to this desk, and there was a bunch of flights canceled, a bunch of them. I think I counted 17 that night that were canceled. It's JFK. I avoid like those busy airports like the plague, but this was the only way to get home. I always try to go through Detroit, Charlotte, you know, stuff like that, just trying to somewhere easier. I avoid Atlanta, Washington, Dulles, you know, JFK, or anyway. So I go get in this line to this desk. There's all these people waiting to try to like rebook something or whatever, and I'm just waiting there. I stood in line for over an hour, and it never really moved. And then I'm thinking, well, if I get a hotel and then I find out that they're giving out vouchers for hotels or something, then I will have wasted that money. And it's about 7:30 at night, something like that, and this lady makes an announcement, who worked for the airline. This is some kind of an act of God, is the way. They don't have to give you anything. If it's their fault, they have to give you something. If it's some sort of act of God, which I still haven't figured out exactly what that was, then they don't have to give you anything at all. And she said, that's what this is. We're not giving any vouchers. We're not doing anything. And I find out that the quickest I can get another flight is 24 hours later. It leaves at 7:30 that next night. So I'm thinking, good Lord. And I start looking at the hotels, and only the really expensive ones are still there. And I've been up for a long time, and I'm like, I'm gonna pay all this money for a hotel and then check out at 11 a.m. and then stay for 7 hours in JFK Airport the next day. And if you know anything about me, I don't like to wait for permission for things. I just rather like take action somehow, put it up where it's up to me, where I got to deal with this. Which I don't know, where I can like say the hell with it, and I'm the only one that has to deal with it. But I'm thinking, what can I do that's going to make it better? I thought, I'm going to get a damn rental car, and I'm going to drive to Indianapolis. And I look them up. I look up on my phone what rental cars cost. Usually when you drop it off in a different city, it's expensive. And I see like, man, just under $200, I can rent a car, return it 24 hours later in Indianapolis at the airport. I said, screw it, that's what I'm going to do. And I went, got the rental car, and I drove, after all of that, after being awake since 6 a.m., Copenhagen time, flying all the way to New York, I drove 12 hours from JFK Airport to Indianapolis. And man, when I got home, it felt good to be home, but man, I was freaking burnt. I mean, I was up and hurting. Let me move this just a little bit, get out of the sun. And but I did it. I thought, man, instead of just sitting there passively all day in the airport, I can drive, and so I did. I slept. I still don't feel right. That was a few days ago. I still feel pretty damn out of it. I just drank a lot of coffee before I jumped on here is the only reason this feels good. But anyway, I'm home, and if anybody has any advice on parlor guitars, if somebody has a company out there and you think that I should be playing one of them, talk to me. I don't know, man. If I'll probably just buy like some real old one. Maybe I won't do anything at all. Maybe I'll keep I don't know, maybe I'm thinking about getting one just so when I fly I'll have that and take it to Europe or something like that. But if you have any advice, tell me down below. So I'm going to put a video up here of some of the tour stuff so you guys can see it. Not a lot of people saw it, and I want you guys to look at it. So click on this up here, and I'll see you somewhere down the road. Much love to you.